Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where as always we learn through the misfortunes of others. I am your host, Uncivil Law, and we are here with what we hope is the conclusion of the state's case. Oh, thank God. It might actually be over. I know. Our long nightmare might actually be coming to an end. I thought we would watch it together, and also the beginning of the state's case. So I'm looking forward to all those things happening. And we'll go ahead and just get started with that. Should be fun and exciting. This is supposedly the cross-examination of the final state's witness. So we'll see how that works, I guess. Wrong way to phrase that. Let me try something else.
Now that we have the exact
There we go.
position
It's
of
a
the
little
car, do we?
I agree, yeah. The GM data is pretty clear.
Don't really. At first, you did an analysis of driving to and from the office in Hampton in the middle of the day. Not too interested in that, but let's skip to the drive from Moselle to Alameda.
Okay.
How long was that drive? How long did it take him from start to
So
finish?
I'd have to look back to drive. So you're referring to the 9:06 time?
Yes, sir.
So it looks like 9:07. To 9:22, so about 15 minutes.
Okay, and do you need, is it more like 16 minutes? Do you
16
need a
minutes,
pen and
yeah.
paper? 16 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll go there.
Okay. And coming back, how long was it?
$9:43.
And please remember to retweet the pinned comment, as always, does help with channel, bringing attention to the channel. We do appreciate all your help
18
and support.
minutes,
18 minutes? Okay.
approximately.
So the top speed and the way back we saw was a little faster, but it actually took a little longer to make the return trip. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And you're referring to the same drive to Alameda and back?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Are you aware that Senior Special Agent David Owen did a test drive from Alameda to Moselle on January 3rd of this year?
That's correct. I was in the passenger seat of that.
And how long did that take?
I would have to see the data. I don't remember.
You don't have that? You don't know if it was 17 minutes and 35 seconds?
If I was presented with something, it could be, but I do not have that number in front of me.
Will you just take my word for it?
If it were that, it would be right in between those two times that we just saw for Mr. Murdaugh going back and forth, would it not?
It could, but there was different variables at the time.
It was during the day, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
So on this way back, there's that little 80-mile-an-hour spurt. How long did that go on?
I am unsure of that. It's just the data point is plotted. It doesn't give a. It just gives you a timestamp. It doesn't say for how long.
In your experience, I think you talked earlier that you would respond to calls in a marked car with blue lights.
Not a marked car, but a marked car with blue lights. Yep.
Is it extremely unusual for someone who's on a straightaway and a rural road at night to give it some gas on a little burst?
A little bit of gas, but when you know it's 55 and you have deer and other environmental factors that play in.
Yes, but it's not that unusual, is it, for someone to give it a little gas on a straightaway and a rural road?
It depends on what a little gas is.
But the overall speed that he went to get from where he was going, coming from to where he's going to, as far as you know, is in line with the test drive that you were in the passenger seat for?
If that is correct, what you mentioned, yes.
It's like right in between those two, actually.
Like I said, I don't have that test drive data in front of me, but
Well, let's move on then to when he drove past that point where Maggie's cell phone was later recovered. And I think that may start on slide 23.
23?
Actually, if you go back one slide. Right. So we're in slide 22, sorry.
22? Okay,
So he's going 37.2 miles an hour here.
that's correct.
And next slide. Now he's still approaching it at 42, so he's accelerating gently. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Next slide. Looks like he is just past it, going slightly faster than he was on the previous slide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Next slide. He's continuing to, now he's a good bit down the road there at 45, but is it fair to say he's continuing a fairly gentle acceleration?
I would say so, yes.
So what we saw as he passed it, he did not slow down and speed up as he went past that point. He continued his same gentle acceleration.
Per the data, yes.
And we won't go through it, but if we went down later to when it goes down to the bottom of the screen, it would show that he slowed down slightly, corresponding when he sent that text, "Go to see him, be right back." Is that accurate?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. We'll be done with that. I'm going to now just skip with this data all the way to when he approaches the kennel coming from the house right before he calls 911.
Okay.
The direction he is driving as he comes right up, right before he parks, would he have his? Would he be illuminating the bodies of Maggie and Paul?
Per the aerial that I'm looking, I don't know if you want to put it on the screen so we can show, but per the aerial, it would be coming around that curve and it would illuminate at least Maggie's body.
Would the illumination, is it going back towards that space between the barn and the kennels where Paul's body was out?
Like I said, this is just a data plot.
But you could determine that, could you not, from just the last 2 points, because that would show you the direction that the vehicle is pointed.
It doesn't say the vehicle's pointed that direction, it just says that's
But
where
if
the
it moved
vehicle's
from
at.
point A to point B, being a car, it would have to be
Yeah,
in
but
that
where
direction.
where it final rests, I don't know which direction it's
But as
pointing.
it's moving,
As it's moving, yes, you would think it would go
right.
that
So,
direction.
so the headlights certainly on Maggie. It would appear from the plot maybe on Paul as well. And does he park? Does he park near Maggie's body?
I do not know where he parked the first time, because all we have is when the deputies arrived the second time. So
On your plot,
on the plot here,
when he comes the first time before the 911 call, where does his vehicle stop in relation to Maggie's body?
it stops before it.
Is it, how close is it?
I do not have a
You know,
approximate.
descriptive, is it very close? Is it pretty much right there?
I wouldn't say it's right on top of it, but it's
Very
it's in
close.
the area.
So as he's pulling up to the scene, he can certainly see one, if not both, bodies on the ground, and he stops right next to Maggie. Is that fair?
I'm just looking at the data provided. I was not there on scene. I
Well, the
don't know
data
what he- I
provided
don't
is
know
the
what he
location
saw.
of the car and the location of the body.
But I don't know
correct?
what he would have saw or what the car would have saw at that time.
You don't know what would be directly in front of his car as it was moving from point to point to point?
I was not out there.
You don't know which direction the car would be pointing as it moved
We know
from
which direction
point
the
to
car would
point
be
to point?
pointing, but what he saw or what the final
Well,
resting
forget
place
what
of
he
the
saw.
car is.
Is the car's headlights pointing at the bodies as he's pulling up?
I cannot give a definitive answer on that because I was not there, and the data I have,
I'm asking from the data.
the
Obviously,
data
you
does
weren't
not
there.
say.
Allow to finish his answer.
You must give the witness an opportunity to respond fully. You may proceed.
There is no data that says that the headlights were pointing in a specific direction or at a specific object, so I cannot answer that.
When you say there's no data saying the headlights are pointing in a specific direction, were they not pointed along the line that would connect the last two data points before the car stops and goes in the park?
For the drive, but it does not show, I mean, it could be at an angle. It's such a little dot, but does not show a vehicle in exact position of it, so I cannot answer that.
Right, and we're not talking about the dot, we're talking about a line connecting two dots.
Okay, but
and
you
a
were
car
asking about
moving
the
along
dot.
that line. The headlines would be pointed down the line, correct?
Objection's overruled.
Ask your question again.
We're talking not about a point, but about a line, and a car moving down a line. As it moves down that line between 2 points, would its headlights not be pointed in the same direction down that line?
I would assume.
So he arrives at the scene, gets out, presumably he goes in the park, and then 20 seconds later, first dials 911. Is that your testimony?
Yep.
So pulling up on the scene, body's in his headlight, presumably knows something's horribly wrong, gets out 20 seconds to the first call to 911. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which was actually misdialed 9111, and he had to redial it a second time, which was at 18 seconds, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So he had 20 seconds, and I think there's maybe an implication, or that's not enough time.
Objection is sustained to the comment of counsel.
Sir, may I approach? Is this timer set for 20 seconds?
It is.
Okay. When I say so, would you please press the start button?
Okay.
Now. That was 20 seconds. Would you agree?
Per your phone, yes.
Or
your
dispute the
phone.
phone
I do not.
accuracy, do you? If the person
the
getting out of the
phone.
car had seen the bodies already and already knew something is horribly wrong, do you believe that that is an unreasonably short period of time to inspect and call 911?
I'm here to testify on this data, not the hypothetical. I think you're asking the wrong person on that.
Fair enough. We'll move on. Okay, I'm going to turn to your condensed timeline,
Okay.
which I think is State's Exhibit 519. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 21.
Okay.
And towards the bottom, 9:06 and 20 seconds, it says Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone sideways orientation,
That is correct.
and meaning that her phone at that time went to a sideways orientation?
So between 9:06:12 and 9:06:20, from the phone experts, that it started at 9:06:12 and it ended at 9:06:20.
Okay.
Those two orientations.
I'll ask it this way.
Okay.
A second later, what would be the orientation of her phone?
From a second from what? The 20?
After that, yes, at 9:06:21.
I do not know.
Well, then what does this entry mean, if it doesn't mean that it...
There's nothing that says 9:06:21 on here.
Right, so what happened at 9:06 and 20 seconds?
It finished its orientation change to sideways.
What does that mean?
So it went from a portrait. So let me get the phone. So it went from portrait to sideways.
And until...
In those, between the, you
Go
know,
ahead, sorry.
between 9:06:12 and 9:06:20, is that is what it's showing. That's why we have the little purple on the right-hand side to show that it's connected. It's all one big sequence. Per our phone experts that have previously testified.
So it would remain in portrait until remain in the landscape orientation until the next change?
I am unsure of that. I'm not a phone expert, So I am unsure of that. I was given this data, and this is how it was relayed to me, and this is how I have put it in this timeline.
Okay. So if you were to go to page 19, please.
Okay.
And the very last entry there, Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone vertical orientation.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So this was all given to me from different, data sources. So how I read this is that the phone has turned to a vertical orientation. So I guess
Has turned to a vertical orientation. And
because we have a sideways orientation and then we have a vertical orientation.
Okay. Just keep scanning down until you get to the next orientation change.
I don't really have
Maggie
any
Murdaugh's
particular
phone, please.
thoughts. It's just a lot of detail that doesn't.
From page 19?
Yes, sir.
I don't really understand
Just
what it
looking for
means.
the next orientation change.
Just listening. Better be silent and thought a fool.
believe it's
than
gonna be that
speak to remove all
90612.
doubt, that kind of thing.
And what does that say?
Implements an orientation change to portrait.
But the previous change was to portrait, was it not?
It says vertical orientation.
So there's no intervening orientation change. It just goes to portrait and then changes to portrait again?
As I read the data, yes, that's correct. Like I said, I'm not a phone expert. I was given these different pieces to plot, and this is how they've been plotted.
When you're given these pieces to plot, do
Mm-hmm.
you ever notice if things don't seem to make sense or don't match with other data? Do you alert anyone?
So we have phone experts that review that. So they have reviewed the data, and I do not know if that's something that they came across.
And you can't tell me with that last, or can you tell me this? The last orientation
I believe
change
the
here on
jury
page
looking
21, is that
frustrated.
the last change on her phone until the extraction at the SLED lab?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably
I'd have
pass
to
on that
go
offer,
through
cheerful, but thank you.
And double check. Would you like me to do that?
You may.
Okay. You said orientation change, correct?
Yes, sir.
Per this condensed timeline, you are correct. That would be the last orientation change that I see noted.
I mean, that's the last one until the phone was downloaded?
I believe so.
You should,
We non-lawyers have no
exhibit,
idea what's happening.
That
I
would-
don't know why
now,
he's
the thing
asking
is,
the
this is just the
question.
timeline, so it could be in what's already in evidence.
I mean, he's
from
attacking the
Lieutenant
timeline.
Murdaugh. But in this timeline, that's the only one showing.
Attacking the timeline. I'm just
Okay.
not sure.
And for orientation
100% sure
changes,
why.
we're really only concerned for the day of,
Right.
for this timeline.
Show what's been previously admitted as Defense Exhibit 38. And go to the last page. This was previously admitted in evidence during the examination of Lieutenant Dove. It's a complete list of every orientation change recorded on her
Oh my
phone.
God, we're back to the
That's on the
spreadsheet.
extract. Is the last one listed, the very last one.
This is
the
that
906
hot court
orientation
action you guys were promised.
The 906
Too hot.
bottom?
Yes,
Too hot for the under
That's correct.
18 crowd.
The
You have to
906.
put a goddamn age verification wall on the stream.
the
Make
far
it age
bottom
restricted.
column.
yes.
So hot.
We show States Exhibit 278.
Oh, highlight it for me, baby.
This was also admitted in that examination. This is a photo taken in the SLED lab before the extract, actually 5 days before the extract. This phone is in portrait mode, is it not?
The way I read it, yes, that is portrait mode.
So that very last orientation change we saw was to portrait mode, because there are no subsequent orientation changes,
I assume so, yes.
and not landscape as it says on this.
The thing is, before this picture was taken, you have to remind yourself that, SLED got the phone, and then this photo was
Thank
taken
you,
at a
Bry,
lab.
for the kind
Yes.
gift memberships.
So
They really
I don't
help the
know.
channel quite a lot.
I don't
Do
know what
appreciate them.
happened.
Thank you.
People, it's been moving around, manipulated. I don't.
But we just looked at a complete list of all the orientation changes, did we not? It wasn't time limited to a particular day, it's everything on the phone.
Like I said, I did not produce that document, so I'm going to have to go on your word on that.
Let me ask this before we kind of move on from this. It's been stated a few times in testimony,
closed
and I think
captioning.
you did as well, that you don't get an orientation change recorded when the screen. So my screen is off. If I turn it, like to get an orientation change, and it's off, if I just stand here for a while, however long, an hour, and without moving the phone, turn the screen on, will there be an orientation change?
That is a technical question for an expert that we had up here yesterday. That I am not an expert, and I am not a phone expert. So that's not a-
where I'm going with that is simply, you don't know yourself in preparing this timeline whether the orientation changes that you're putting on here correspond with movement of the phone at that moment.
I do not. I'm going off of data I was given from phone experts that gave me the data and has been put on this timeline.
This is Cross. He said he wasn't an expert with respect to that particular question.
I'm going to turn now to the timeline and really focus on the timeline for Maggie Murdaugh. And I'm going to skip, kind of close to the time that we're.
Are you still on the condensed or the full?
I'm going to be on the condensed the entire
Okay.
time. I'm not going to refer to the other one. And I want to start on page 7.
Are you still on the condensed or the full?
I'm going to be on the condensed the entire
Okay.
time. I'm not going to refer to the other one. And I want to start on page 7. You have some screen off on times here, but you didn't put every time the screen went on and off, did you?
I do not recall. I'd have to look at what was given.
So you don't know if the screen of her screen went off at 8:49:28, came back on. at
Everything
8:50.
should be on this document.
Okay. Did her screen go off at 8:49:28 and come back on at 8:53:08?
I have a screen on at 8:49:20.
And when did it go off?
I do not see it on here.
Well, let me ask it this way. Do you know that whether the screen went off at 8:49:28 and came back on at 8:53:08?
I do not unless I have it on here.
And then she has steps that begin at 8:53:15. Is that correct?
For this document, yes.
When you were looking at the step data, did you look at the corresponding distance data that goes with the step data?
I was just provided the timestamp and then the steps.
Are you aware that the phone in the same database keeps distance data with the step data?
I have been made aware of that.
But you have not looked at any of that distance data.
A rooster has killed a man in Ireland.
I was told that it's not accurate, it's not reliable, the distance, so I did not focus in on that.
So,
Jasper Cross lost liters of bloods in brutal attack.
would you think that it is
Rooster.
possibly, well, just as an investigator, on your spreadsheet, I won't bother to put it up, but you had a bunch of
Okay.
time periods where Alec had steps, different times. Do you think there would be any relevance to whether
How many days is this trial going to
number
go
of feet
for?
per step and
This
all those
trial is
different,
currently
increments
scheduled to
of
end on
extremely
February
consistent?
10th.
Is there any relevance to it?
Would it maybe suggest the same person was walking?
Objections overruled.
I would have to, I didn't do the feet per step, so I'd have to see the data.
I understand that. And the
Yeah.
question is, would there be any relevance to an investigation to seeing that the feet per step were extremely
this year.
consistent for disparate time periods in the same phone?
Like I said, this was just a tool that we used. It could be, it just was not explored.
And if this time period, 8:53 with Maggie Murdaugh's steps to 8:55:32, if the distance covered in that time were short, meaning she was
No,
moving
sadly, I
particularly
meant February
slowly,
10th.
Did that have any relevance?
That's where we're at.
It depends, but that distance is, we're told, is highly inaccurate, and everything is, an estimate. So even the steps, that's, we're told
Sadly,
by
I
the phone
meant
expert that's
February
an
10th
estimate.
of this year.
That's not an exact number. The same, I would assume, for the
Yep, it's going that well,
the
guys.
distance.
So you don't think, you did not check to see if the speed at which Maggie Murdaugh was moving on that very last increment, the last time the phone says she was ever walking, there was no, how fast is she going? Is she running? Is she creeping? No one looked at that.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Objections overruled.
I did not look at that, no. I cannot say for anyone else.
The never-ending
And
trial.
the same question for Alex Murdaugh. Did anyone look for, I think you have
The
over
never-ending
8
trial.
of these increments listed out. Whether he was going particularly fast, unusually fast for him, unusually slow for him, the same speed he always goes. Did anyone look at that?
All we have here is the data that is on that sheet.
And you do have these steps per minute, but do you have any data suggesting that within, and I'll pick one just to make the question simpler, Alex Murdaugh's first,
Never-ending trial.
I'll pick an even easier one, entry number 30, which is when he's at Alameda and then part of when he's leaving Alameda, is that correct?
That is correct, based by the time.
And it says 60 steps over almost, just a little short of 10 minutes.
I believe so, yep.
So, of course, it's slightly more than 6 steps per minute, which would be a step
correct.
every 10 seconds. So this time period is not saying that he's going that many steps per minute, right? It's saying he walked and then he didn't walk and he walked. Is that fair?
It's just giving us an analysis, a general overview of, our estimated steps that it gives us, and then estimated steps per minute. That's all it is. It's just a general.
Well, I'll just ask open-ended. Why is this last column steps per minute here? Why are you presenting
The
this?
spreadsheet stuff is definitely hot. Hot
It's
spreadsheet
just another
action.
way to present the data.
So turning back to, I think we were on page 19.
Okay.
And Maggie Murdaugh's phone is walking. Now, we had from previous testimony an activation of the Siri user interface with the side button. Did you recall that from previous testimony?
I do not, but it could have been.
Okay, you don't recall previous testimony about that. Can we bring up Defense Exhibit 41?
Some people started accusing him, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue
And there's a
accusing
beginning
him
and it's all the
forever
same
just
time there in the
because
bottom
it's the
couple rows.
trial
You
that
can see
does not
853.20.
end. It's unend, my friend.
I don't know if this refreshes or if you recall, or perhaps you know from experience that the Siri interface can be activated by squeezing and holding the right button on the phone. Do you know that?
I believe so, if you have it, activated to do that.
So the phone's walking, it's in somebody's hand. Now, this is something that's not in your timeline, but again was certainly discussed with Lieutenant Dove. 8:54:32, the screen comes on, and a couple of seconds later, there's a camera access. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay, and that's not on your timeline?
It is not.
Okay. Now, that came up in testimony with both experts, and I believe, do you recall Lieutenant Dove said that it was possible to find out what caused that, but he had not himself looked to see.
That's correct.
And I believe investigator Grubb said he did not know why Is that correct?
I believe so.
But it's knowable, according to the previous testimony?
That's correct.
But no one's checked to see?
To my knowledge, no.
And then after that, there's some orientation changes, and then finally, the screen goes off, I believe, for an more extended period of time at 8:55:36. Is that correct?
Hallucinations
That's
aren't helping.
Now, after this
Sounds pretty bad.
period, there's nothing else that happens with her phone other than missed calls and text, except that final orientation change. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Now, does that fact that we aren't seeing anything after 8:55:36, does that mean that she was dead at 8:55:36?
Like I said, this is just data that I plotted.
So the answer is no?
I don't
It
know
does
that
not
answer.
mean that?
I have to go by the data here, and there's no activity.
Right.
You can take that however you want, but there's no activity.
I mean, is it fair, and this isn't trying to be tricky, if use of the phone ceases as time goes on, it's more and more likely there's something amiss, right? The first second no
assume
one's
so,
using
yeah.
the phone is normal. I mean, someone might easily go, even Paul might go 5 minutes without using his phone, but as you keep going on, it gets a little more likely something's wrong, right? Is that fair?
I would say so.
Okay.
But
So
you have it
it's
at
it's not an immediate thing that, well, the last,
Request the witness be able to finish the answer he started.
I apologize, Your Honor, I honestly thought he had finished.
Oh, I'm good. Go ahead.
So it wouldn't be fair to say that if the last usage was at some particular second that the person was dead that second, right? It would create an inference that would increase in strength over time that no one's using the phone, something's wrong, right?
I can't answer that. I mean, I don't have the knowledge on that.
Were they using it before they? Were they using it after they died? Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun.
Do you recall in previous testimony that Special Agent Owen said with regard to Almeida and I think a blue raincoat, that it would take, in his estimation, 5 to 10 minutes to dispose of evidence already wrapped up? From this, do you recall that?
I do recall.
Okay. So to be consistent with the data you have here, well, let me
That's
ask
a
this,
good
how long
example.
with the test drives was to drive from
That's a good example
kennels
of the
to
defense asking a
the main
question.
house?
I know we
That's
did
not
various ones.
hearsay
I'd have
because
to
it
look
comes
at the
from a
data.
party
We did
opponent,
at
right?
various speeds.
He's asking him about what a different
It's very
statement,
short.
15
what a
seconds?
different witness said,
That would be a lot, I would say.
which is hearsay, except it's not, because it's coming from a party opponent.
So, and we know that Alex's phone is at the house, right?
We've
from
heard
8,
the,
got left at
we've heard the
house.
prosecution
That's-
ask a lot of questions before, but what Alex said,
it's
that's a
not-
good
it's
example of
not
the
going
defense using
anywhere
that rule.
Since it was up the house with the family.
I just show no activity on it.
Right.
You can assume it is at the house.
But it started showing activity again at 9:02 and 18 seconds? That's when the steps start?
That is correct. 283 steps.
Is it possible for the trial itself to be considered
So-
cruel and unusual punishment? Not under the current law, no.
From that 8:55:36 to 9:02 with a minute and some seconds to get up to the house, you would have like 5 minutes if it were him to do everything and get back to the house in his house to the phone. 5 minutes.
I think you're missing that the phone was actually locked at 8:49 for Maggie's phone.
And
So the
30 seconds or something.
8:55:36 is just when the backlight is off, but her phone locks forever at 8:49.
But it's moving around, right, at 8:53. You didn't look at the speed at which it's moving, but that could tell us something. There's a Siri activation. I'm just asking my question, Your Honor.
What's the question?
Her phone is moving around, starting at 8:53, comma, there's a Siri activation near the start of that time, comma, and then there's a camera activation during this time, and some orientation changes, and then it goes off. Is that all correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you don't know how fast the phone was moving during that period, but that is known, just no one has looked. Is that correct?
So everything is estimation with the phone. It does not track your exact, speed or distance or
I
steps.
can
It's
be
all
your
estimated.
hero, baby.
So exact numbers is unknown.
I can wash away your tears. You are my everything.
And you have, I assume from your testimony, you don't know why someone would take Maggie's phone but not Paul's phone?
I would not know. I mean, I'm not there.
Brittany, wash away your tears from this trial. Brittany, I
Given
might
your
take you up
job
on
as a
this.
SLED agent, I mean, would the fact
What are you doing? What are you doing later today, Brittany?
the phone was in someone's hand and there was an attempt to take a picture, would that be an inference you could draw? as
He
to
never
why
said
that
it
phone was
attempted to
taken?
take a picture, from what I heard, but you'd have to ask a technical expert on exactly what that camera function was for.
Well, you see, the thing is that the technical experts, they're not going to say either, are they? It's some investigator is going to have to make some inferences
How am I
from the
today?
data. And the
I think I'm
question
losing
is,
my sanity.
Is it a fair inference that if the camera's in somebody's hand and they're trying to take a picture, that might be why the killers take that phone and not the phone that's in somebody's pocket?
So the way I,
Your Honor.
What's the basis for the objection?
Argumentative.
The response to, by the defense, any response?
We could
Your
dance
Honor,
if
I'm
we want
asking,
to. Leave the world
investigator
behind.
Whether,
If you don't dance, if you don't dance, then no friends of mine.
Argumentative.
Your Honor, I do not believe it's argumentative. I'm asking if an inference would be fair.
I overrule the objection.
Say we dance.
so the inference I'm looking at it is that the camera was trying to identify a face to unlock, which it did not. So that is the inference that I would look at that instead of taking a photo, from a layperson perspective.
Right, except that's not an inference an investigator would make, correct? A technical expert would go and see what triggered the camera activation and tell that to an investigator, correct?
I was not, but I am not the technical person.
And I think we covered in some
Friends don't
previous
dance,
questioning
lifted don't
that
dance, no
the
friends
testimony
of
has
mine.
been that that's knowable, but no one has checked. I kind of switch over to Paul.
Okay.
And just to sort of summarize everything up, there doesn't seem to be any missed activity until the unread text message from Rogan at 8:49:35. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is it correct that his screen does not ever come on again until after the 911 call?
Is screen coming on?
Yes, sir.
I believe it dies shortly after at like 10:30, so, I think 10:36.
And I'm aware of the screen
Okay.
coming on after the 911 call, but I'm asking, did it come on at any time between this text from Rogan and those after 10 o'clock times?
Let me just double check.
Do you want to build a snowman? I have a
I show
nice
a
sled.
display screen on at 10:20:08.
Thank you, Neiman, for the
So
5
the
year
answer
memberships.
is no?
It does turn on. That's what you asked, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking if it turns on before the 911 call.
Before the 911 call. For the whole day?
Well, it would be about an hour,
I'm
10
in
minutes.
trouble, dear. Papa, don't be. I'm in trouble, dear. Ooh. Having my baby.
I'm not seeing a screen on before the 911 call. In that 9 to...
So
10
incoming
o'clock
text
timeframe.
messages.
Reading
calls,
spreadsheets
they were
like
received,
what the
did not
business.
cause the screen to come on.
Flipping through the
That's
pages in the binder like what the business. Answering about
Is it
screen
possible, and I understand
orientation,
this
what
may
the
be a question for a
business.
technical person, but is it possible that that's because the battery was at 2%?
Phone be dying, what the business.
I would not know that answer.
What the
Did anyone
business, what
ask,
the
hey, why
business,
is
what
screen
the
coming
business,
on with
yo.
those notifications?
Unfortunately, I think it's hard to tell, with the experts, but that would
Sled
be
be
my
screwing
assumption
up
that
the
it would be
crime
either
scene.
low
What the
battery.
business?
That's-
Trying to conserve the battery because you don't want the light takes so much power. So I would assume that would be the answer.
So after
Attacking my
whatever
attorney
happened
in
after
courtroom. What's your
8:49, his
business?
phone is not prompting him. It's not lighting up when things come in.
I don't know if it's vibrating or whatnot, but according to the data here, it is. It's not lighting up.
Now, I think the previous testimony was that whoever, if anyone saw his lock screen before the phone went dead, after the 911 call, would have seen the yo text. Is that correct?
Why streaming
So,
this
yes.
if I find it so
They would have
boring?
also seen this.
Well, I
849
wanted to see the
text,
defense
right?
case.
The
'Cause, I've
849.
I streamed so much of the state's case. I thought
Or
I'd
at least a
stream-
notification. that
the
there were
answer to your
multiple
question is I
texts,
wanted to
correct?
stream the defense's
I would
case
assume
and
so, that's
see
correct.
if it got any
And
better.
There were at least
we're still
4
stuck in the
incoming
state's
calls
case.
from Rogan between 9:10
So
and 10:08.
that
Is
plan
that
didn't
correct?
work.
I'm going to go off of your account.
9:10 and 28 seconds,
Okay.
9:42 and 17 seconds. I think there's one at 9:57,
Okay.
one at 10:08.
Correct.
The one at 10:08, that would be during the 911 call, correct?
That is correct.
And
I
that
thought
would
it'd be interesting to see the defense
during
call some
911 call
experts and
before
see-
Alec
Call some witnesses and
leaves-
see if they were
Alec
more
leaves
interesting.
the scene to go up to the house and come back.
Based on the data, that's correct.
We don't actually know why the screen came on those two times, do we? At 9:10 and 18, and then 10, 18, and then 10:20.
When he was building boxes, that was good. Do you want to build a box fort? Do you want to hide away?
We do not.
You know how long the screen stayed on those times?
I do not have that.
Because if they
You don't know
can't
if it
see
was
you,
12 seconds?
then they can't try you today.
At the second one of those, the 10:20:08 screen on, doesn't the Alex
wanna
Murdaugh's
build
phone
a
indicate he's
box
walking at
fort?
that time?
It
So
has
Jer-
to
so
be
it-
a box fort.
We have a start time and an end time. Doesn't mean he's walking during the whole time, but that is what the
Was
phone.
this the
That's
start?
what.
I'm sorry, let me just ask, is this the start? Your Honor, it's just a clarification.
Did you, as soon as the witness starts talking, then you start talking? Who's talking? Were you talking? Well, go ahead.
As
so
I
the
said
phone
before, I
parses
might
the
be
data.
slowly
It gives
losing
you a
my
start
mind.
time and an end time. Doesn't mean they're walking during that whole time. It just takes a start time and end time and gives you that data.
Sure.
So to say that someone's walking during the whole time would be, unreasonable.
After the 911 call, was
I
Rogan the
believe
first
I
person
can
Alex Murdaugh called?
fly.
After the 911
I
call,
believe
Yes, sir.
I can touch the sky. Think about it
calls at
every night and day.
10:06:14.
Spread my wings
You
and
said
fly
Alex called?
Yes, the
away.
first person he called after.
I
hanging up with
believe I
911.
can soar. See
it
me
Rogan?
running through that open door.
I have at 10:17:46. He calls.
I
Randy
believe I
Murdaugh.
can fly.
And that's his brother, correct?
That's correct.
Believe I
Who
can fly.
was the second person he called?
I believe I can
He iMessages Randy, and
fly.
then calls Randy Murdaugh again, and then John Marvin.
John Marvin is another brother, correct?
Yep, at 10:19.
And then the third time person he calls is Rogan, is that correct?
At that time, yes.
And is that about
Well, the jury's
2
well
minutes and
compensated.
30
I think it's
seconds
$20 a
after
day.
that first screen on time?
That's correct.
Okay. So not immediate, not the first person.
A whole Andrew Jackson apiece,
I
baby.
think you're referring to that question that was previously during the 911 call. This is all after the 911 call.
Right. The question is, it's about 2.5 minutes after Paul's phone screen comes on that there's a call to Rogan, and it's the third person that
The
Alex
court
Murdaugh
supply
calls.
food.
Is that correct?
Different courts
That
do
was
it
a
differently.
9:08. Wasn't the screen on?
I wouldn't be surprised if the
No,
answer is
10,
no.
18 and 53 seconds.
That'd be correct.
So I think we went over that anyone who was looking at could see what was on Paul's screen, would see multiple missed messages, calls from Rogan right on the screen.
I would assume.
Even a call coming in during the 911 call.
They wanted the money back from the jury duty?
assume
That's
that's-
hilarious.
Okay, so as an investigator, do you think it would be terribly unreasonable that after calling other family members, someone would call the person who is the best friend of the dead son, who had multiple missed messages and calls, and even a call coming in during the 911 call? Is calling that person to ask what happened, what's going on, is that, to you as an investigator, an unreasonable thing to do after calling other family members?
I would, as an investigator, I think that would be very odd, given the scene and the whole situation, that you're on the phone constantly, yes.
That you're standing there next to your dead son, his phone is ringing for
Yep.
someone, and you call that person after calling other people?
Yes,
That would be
because I
unreasonable.
am standing over my son and wife, and it's just witnessing that for the first time, I would think that would be, to have someone on their phone constantly like that, right after, given the scene and the situation, yes, as an investigator, I would think that is very,
It wouldn't be someone trying to find out what happened.
at that moment, that would be the last thing that would probably come through my mind as an investigator, looking at the scene, is trying to figure out what happened minutes after I discover it. I'd be in a state of shock if that was me personally.
And speaking of a state of shock, I think you have in the timeline later on, he reads some spam text message about, I think there's a picture of a woman in a bikini.
I wouldn't call it a spam text message. It's from Michael Gunn, who would be one of his
A
friends.
group text.
A group text, yeah.
And then he Googles the name of a restaurant in Edisto Beach, is that correct?
That is what comes up on his phone
And
extraction.
doesn't he also call a videographer he hadn't spoken to in years?
Can you give me a page number to refer to?
Yes. Page 42, Brian White, last entry.
That's what the data shows.
So he would seem to be in a state of shock. None of that makes any sense, does it? You're not going to Google the
I'm
name
not.
of a restaurant after you find your son murdered.
I'm not Alex Murdaugh. I don't know what he was thinking at that moment. Probably wouldn't be on my phone.
Really, you wouldn't be calling family?
I might be calling family, but I wouldn't be
The
Googling
testimony
and
was
doing
that Rogan
stuff.
was family.
If you ask a question, if you want him to answer, you have to give him an opportunity to answer. Proceed.
I would not be Googling and doing other things with my phone, no.
You think he was, do you believe he was Googling a restaurant, or do you think he was fat-fingering the phone because he was in shock?
I have to go off of the data, and that's what the data shows.
And you believe that calling family and calling someone that the prior testimony was like another son is unreasonable in the circumstances?
I would say so, yes. Given the fact that you just arrived to the scene, yes.
And had just arrived to the scene, had actually been there at that point, 15, 20, 25 minutes, correct?
That's correct. I'd be doing anything I could
Trial is
to
not good for my diet.
help my loved ones.
I want to shove my face full of ice cream because it makes me feel marginally better. I'm not hungry. This is how I get into trouble with weight. I eat because I'm not hungry, which I'm not. Eat because I'm bored, stressed, frustrated.
This, now, kind of turning
Tired.
back to Maggie's phone. Her screen was on at 9:06 and 12 seconds, right? That last orientation change.
Let me flip back to it. You said her screen was on?
Yes.
Have you said? Yeah, her phone was locked, but her screen, yeah, for the orientation from previous testimony, the screen had to be on for it to log the orientation changes.
So there was some movement of the phone between 9:06 and 12 seconds and 9:06 and 20 seconds.
That'd be my understanding given previous testimony. Correct.
And in this period, 9:02 to 9:06 and 47 seconds.
Old frozen banana bites from Hub. That sounds pretty
Alex
good.
Murdaugh is walking, I think, 283 steps in that time period.
In that timestamp period, correct.
Yeah. But her phone is not.
I'm in raisin ice cream.
No one's walking with her phone.
Sure,
correct?
if I've had
The phone is
rum
not
and raisin.
logging any kind of steps. I don't know if someone's walking with it, but it's not logging steps at that time.
But at that time, Alex Murdaugh's
Sounds
phone is logging
interesting.
steps.
His phone's logging from 9:02:18 to 9:06:47. I believe her last log was in the 8 o'clock, the 8:53 to 8:55.
And at 9:06 and 14 or 15 seconds, Alex Murdaugh calls her phone, correct?
That's correct.
So he calls her phone while walking. Or in a period in which his steps are being recorded by the phone, to be specific.
There's a begin time and an end time. He could have stopped walking a couple seconds, couple minutes into it. It doesn't give us that precise data from these phone distractions.
And that time period that he stops walking is 9:06 and
Maybe I
47
should
seconds.
maybe I
correct?
should start a
And the
GoFundMe to
car,
raise money for massive
Chevy
life
Suburban
section.
starts a second later.
That'd be
after
good.
that, right?
From the data, correct.
Or a GoFundMe to get
So,
all the fat sucked out of my
It's a
stomach.
fair inference that he ends that by walking to the car, getting in and turning it on.
I'm not sure when exactly he got in the car or how long he was sitting in the car before, but this is what the timestamps show, and this is what the vehicle start time shows, and the end time for the
Yeah.
steps.
So his phone is stepping, walking, while he calls Maggie's phone, which is moving, but not stepping with him. Is that what the data shows?
That's your inference on the data, but
Well, I mean, breaking it down, his phone is in a period of steps, correct?
unknown when there is steps
Just
during that period.
his phone is in this time period of steps, correct?
Correct.
Her phone is not in any period of steps, correct?
Correct.
Her phone in this time period where the phone call's coming in, 9:06, 12 seconds, 20 seconds, there's some motion because there's an orientation change, correct?
That's correct.
And he's calling the phone during this period that his phone's in steps, right, at that moment, right?
I cannot say that he's actually in steps at 9:06:12.
Yes, and you said it, but his phone says there's this period that he's walking, and in that period, between the start and end times, he's calling her phone.
That is correct, but you can see during the 911 call too that there's times where someone could be stopped, someone could be walking, so we don't know if he stopped at 9:05:15 and the orientation changes and he's right at the car. I don't know that.
Do we know, we'll put this, do we have any evidence that her phone and his phone ever moved together? Not speculation, but evidence showing that they're moving together. Same person moving at the same time with both phones.
Moving together, like physically moving, or functioning in like,
Yes, that they're both moving, the same person is carrying both phones, they're moving at the same time.
I would argue that between 9:06:12 and 9:20, that the same person has both phones.
Because there's an orientation change and no steps on this phone.
You have an
No steps on this phone?
you have an orientation change starting while someone's calling, looking at the phone during that time period.
And would it perhaps be reasonable that someone has that phone and an incoming call comes in, the screen says Alex Murdaugh, and it gets tossed out a window? Is that
I think they're
another
going to draw
fair,
this class
possible
out so they can start on Monday.
explanation?
First of all, the
That
court's
could
not
be
in
your
on
explanation.
Monday. They're on Tuesday, but
Why
you're
would
not
that explanation
necessarily-
be less fair than what you just said?
you're not
Based on- just based
I
on the
don't.
data.
I actually think that the defense actually said
how
they
you
had
interpret the
like
data.
an expert they flew in. So I think their first expert they're going to call today because I think I think
On the
it's
drive
through
to
the moon.
Alameda and back, did Alec take any detours from the expected route?
Not that I could see. The route matched up with his interviews.
And in your timeline, we occasionally see these, I guess, infotainment systems coming on, but nothing else happening. The prior testimony was that even the FBI engineer doesn't know why that is. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. He said it could be, you get close to the vehicle. Sometimes when I don't know if you newer GM vehicles, you get close to it and you can kind of hear a little buzzing noise. It's almost like the system's booting up. That's how he described it to me. It could be the key fob being closed. It could be the car unlocking, locking, door opening. Just they don't know what actually caused it, but it's just booting up and running in the background.
When you were looking at the sort of going in and out of park
He
data,
wasn't an expert
did you
as to
look at the
something.
data
That
for other days? Than
they asked
than
about
June 7th?
something, and he's like,
I did
I'm not
not.
an expert as to that. He might be an expert.
So
as
you
to
wouldn't
other
know
things.
whether on other days there are periods in which it seems to go in and out of park repeatedly in a short period of time?
I would not.
You wouldn't know if that happened on 6/4, 6/5, or also 6/6?
I would not, no. I was focused in on June 7th, 2021.
Would looking at those other days and seeing the same thing happen inform
I
your
missed the name.
interpretation
It's their
of
last
seeing it going in
expert.
and out
I'm
of
sorry, I
park
don't
on
have the
6/7?
name, and I couldn't be bothered to look it up.
I was just looking on the day of the murders.
I mean, if it did that every single day, would it seem unusual to also do it on 6/7?
That'd be a question for Mr. Fakowski, who actually looks at that data
It's a glowy.
as a
Would it?
profession. It would.
He's going to make inferences about behavior based on the data, or is he just going to say what the data is?
He could say what the data is, but I wouldn't know an inference. I don't know someone's driving pattern and how they shift, and how would I know that?
And he would?
But how would I know that?
Well, the question really is, if it happens every day, is there anything unusual about it happening on 6/7?
A period of days is not every day. You'd have to look at I would assume, a wide range of days to get,
How many?
I don't know.
If it happened every day for the preceding 3 days, would that be enough?
Every day is a new day. I would not, something could happen different on a different day. I mean, I don't know how you could compare that data.
Wow.
You go different places, you do
Lightning.
different things. Different things happen during drives. I don't think you could accurately show that.
Every day is a different day. Every day is a new day that we hope that the case will end. Every day is a new day that we get closer to me watching me lose my complete sanity. Every day is another day where I resist the temptation to shove my face full of ice cream.
You showed sort of towards the end some text messages, and one of them seemed to make a reference regarding possible drug use. Do you remember that?
I do.
And that was dated May 6th?
Do you have it? Do you have the copy pulled out? Are you referring to the text from Paul
Yes, I am.
to Alex? Okay. I have May 6, 2021 at 10:52.
And then there was some Google searches by Maggie Murdaugh.
That is correct.
Are you aware of a text from Alec regarding pills to Maggie on May 7?
I would have to see the text.
Show you what's been marked as defense 138, which I believe.
Yep. I am very sorry that I do this all to you. I love you. Yep.
Objection. No objection to the exhibit, Your Honor.
I'll offer what's been marked as defendants 138 instead of
Let's admit it.
Okay, Alma.
You Girl Scout, glad to have you back.
to being confronted about the pills that you previously read?
I can only assume this is from Alex to Maggie. The text message I read was from Paul to Alex.
So his family was aware of his drug issues, correct? I mean, from the text.
I would assume from the text.
And he was aware that they were aware, correct?
Correct.
And they appear to be loving and supporting.
Well, this is Alex to Maggie. If you read other text messages, she never responds to this that day, from what I saw. So I don't know, unless you have what she sent back, or if you can't ask them, I don't know if they were loving and supporting of it. This is from Alex to Maggie.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to see further text messages.
I beg your question, Bill. No further questions, Your Honor.
Indirect.
May it please the court.
No. Does not please the court. Shut up.
I was guilty.
No, please the court if you stop talking. You know what, please the court if you end the trial on the 10th. That please the court a lot.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have you go to the jury room for a short break.
Oh, Lord. Why? But the defense's case is going to start soon, right? Case is going to start soon, right? Right?
Be in recess for 5 minutes.
All rise.
Well, I'm planning on streaming the whole defense case. I haven't gone that far yet, man. We'll just see how it goes. You know, I haven't gone that far, to be honest, Girl Scout. It depends on whether or not there's really something meaningfully for me to do. You know, and whether or not there's a reason for me to stream it, right? Whether or not there's something for me to say, whether or not it's interesting. What should we talk about for 5 minutes or so while we're waiting? I'm planning on going to Vegas, I think. So that would be next weekend, next Sunday, a week from tomorrow, to be there for that little meetup in Vegas. Yeah, Girl Scout, I saw that. The DUI guy offered to pay for me to be there. I think I'm going to turn it down. Nick Ricada is having a meetup in Vegas. So I'd be going to be there for the meetup. And several other people from the LawTube genre are going as well. So it would be a nice little business development meeting, which means it's also a tax write-off, which is nice. Don't forget fun. I'll try to throw in fun in there somewhere. Robin Runkle, no. Robin Runkle are not going because they are going to the Gunnies, which is at the exact same time, unfortunately. So they are planning on coming to Texas to attend this award show for like gun YouTubers and stuff because Runkle was nominated for some things. So he's planning on going to this Gunnies award show, which is at the same exact time. Yeah, I want Runkle to win the second minute prize for the kicks too. That'd be great. Best YouTuber on the second minute, someone not from the United States. That'd be hilarious. Get some awesome fried seafood. Seaweed. I'm familiar with that one, but okay. So yeah, I don't think I'll be going to South Carolina because I'm going to Vegas next weekend. So it's a pretty cool range in North Las Vegas. Sure, there is. There's a couple cool ranges in Vegas. There's some cool ranges in Austin, to be honest. There are ranges that you can shoot the fully automatic stuff here in Austin. So I'd probably fly in Friday, fly out on Monday. Did I miss anything exciting? Not really. Not so far. Can we a couple uploads from me chilling in Vegas? Maybe. I think the good old boy network in South Carolina needs AC to be guilty for everything, cover up for all of them. I don't think it matters much one way or another for that, to be honest. How goes the working out? It doesn't recently. I haven't really been working out since I've been covering this trial. I haven't found a good way to manage my time with the trial, to be honest. I don't really have the energy to do it during the day, and at the end of the day, I don't really have the energy for it. So I have not been really working out while I've been doing it. Yeah, court's on a 5-minute break. Yeah, court's on a 5-minute break, Robin. So they said at least. How am I feeling? Not too bad. A little tired, but otherwise fine. I really need to book myself a massage this weekend. I haven't had a massage in forever. I could really use one, to be honest. Never had one. Chiropractors are a con. My overall feeling is chiropractors are a con. It's not legitimate medicine. It's not taught in medical school, so it's not legitimate medicine. So my overall feeling is that 90% of the time it's bullshit.
Three.
And I would kill for a hot tub right about now. I used to belong to a gym that had a hot tub in it. It was the greatest thing ever. The the SM58, it's a good choice. An interesting choice. SM58, good choice for a microphone. Is this pants free chat? Is there any other kind?
Thank you. You may proceed.
Special Agent
Your doctor says you need
Rudolph,
vitamin
a
D.
couple matters I have up on the screen. This is from your gas slides.
You got
from,
vitamin D.
The defendant's trip coming back from Alameda, is that right?
That's correct.
And going to this next slide,
Yeah, redirect, yeah.
did the,
Theoretically,
this
we're
is the
getting
trip,
towards
what's the
the
max
end.
speed the defendant hit on this trip back from Alameda back to Moselle, approximately?
I believe it was around 70. I'm sorry, the trip back to Moselle, that would have been around 80.
80?
Yep, the previous
And-
one was around 70.
Did the data, while he was still in Alameda, did it reflect that the vehicle paused for a period of time in the driveway before continuing?
It did.
And would that pause affect that average speed that you calculated
It would.
in that time?
It would.
I want to go to page 22 of your condensed timeline.
Okay.
Need a prescription for vitamin D? Let's buy it. At least in the United States.
And up at the top, tell the jury what time period the data reflects that Maggie Murdaugh's backlight was off.
It shows from 9:07 p.m. to 9:31:44 p.m.
And during the entirety of that time period, does the data reflect that her phone was also locked?
It does.
If you could turn to page 18. Page 19, my apologies.
Okay.
From 8:53 to 8:55, what does the data reflect? Any steps logged on Maggie's phone?
The data reflects Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone shows 59 steps logged.
Can the data tell who was holding that phone during that time period?
It does not, no.
If you could turn to page 39, please. At 10:20:08, what happens, if anything, on Paul's phone?
Paul's iPhone, it shows display on, screen auto lock.
Screen auto lock?
That is correct.
What is your understanding again of auto lock?
My understanding of auto lock, so the phone is already locked, but it's just an automatic feature that when the screen turns on, it just auto locks. It just logs it as auto locks even though it's already locked.
Could that be from not recognizing a face?
Either a face or, pushing the button on the side, but yeah.
What's the next entry on your timeline after that screen on auto lock on Paul's phone at 10:20:08? The very next entry at 10:21:25.
Alex calls Rogan. So at 10:20:08, we have that screen on, an auto lock, and at 10:21:25, Alex calls Rogan Gibson.
In preparing this timeline here today for the jury and for this investigation, what was your specific job with that timeline?
The specific job was just to take all the data that we collected throughout this whole investigation and put it in one concise document.
Synthesize it together in one timeline
That is correct.
from multiple sources,
From multiple sources.
provided to you by experts.
That is correct.
Thank you, Special Agent Dawson.
Anything further?
Very quickly. Stop lying. Nothing is quick, ever. It's not allowed to be quick. We don't do quick.
I think there was some, a question was asked about peak speeds to and from Moselle. Did you look to see if he passed anyone on the way there or back?
What do you mean past anyone? Like a vehicle?
Yes, that his car passed another vehicle on a two-lane road.
I don't know how I'd be able to tell that with this data.
So you don't know if a very fast peak speed was simply gunning it to pass another car?
I do not. But at that late night hour, I would think that'd be, with, the area, not a lot of people out.
I mean, that's just total speculation. You don't know if there's another car out
Just
there or
like
not.
yours is total speculation that he passed
Oh,
someone.
fuck you.
Correct. Yep, I do not know.
Yeah. You don't know if there were any other cars out there to pass. You don't know if he was passing another car. You just don't know, do you?
I do not, just like with your first question.
And you also don't know why Paul's phone, the screen came on those two times at 10:18 and 10:20, do you?
I do not physically know.
That second time that the phone came on was at that moment, Alec was actually on the phone with John Marvin, correct?
At what time?
The second time that the phone came on, 10:20, and I believe it was 8 seconds.
So at 10:28 seconds, that's when we have the display on, and at 10:21:25, Alex calls Rogue.
And at 10, when the display comes on, at that very second, Alex Murdaugh was on the phone, his phone, with John Marvin, correct?
If you do the math, I believe so, correct.
And this was also during a period in which, according to his phone, he's walking around, though again, we don't know if he was walking that exact second. But it's during a period of steps,
It's during a
correct?
period, correct.
Walking around on the phone with John Marvin. No further questions, Your Honor.
Let me step down.
Is it over? Is it over?
From the state.
Your Honor, as discussed, we request a very brief recess for housekeeping matters.
All right, the housekeeping matters are noted. Any further witnesses by the state?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
State rests but for the housekeeping matters.
The housekeeping matters, and then, yes, at that point, the state would formally rest. Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room for another break. Please do not discuss the case.
Oh, thank God.
So what type of housekeeping matters do you have?
I just wanted to do, as my practice, is just one final exhibit check, make sure that there was nothing missed. It will just take a moment, Your Honor.
Thank God. State's case is over. Thank God.
Motion that we will make. I mean, perhaps we could do it while the jury's out, but then he can formally.
That's why I did it in the manner in which I did it. We'll do it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
It's over, but did they actually tie anything together? Well, they never presented the rug. So, no. 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 I'm now looking and seeing which whiskey I'd like to order. My local place. Knob Creek 1.75 liter. Unaged. $70. Not bad. Let's see. Bullet bourbon, but it's only a half for $17. Eagle Rare. $80 for Eagle Rare? $34 for Buffalo Trace? Like I'm getting cheated here. Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey, $29. Yamakaze, 18-year-old single malt Japanese, $309. I don't think so. It's a little bit much for our blood. Knob Creek for $41 for the 9-year-old isn't too bad. We might do that. I think that might be our winner. We can do the 9-year-old Knob Creek 750 milliliter for $41. You got a bottle of Pop Off for $9.42. Sounds about right. Redbreast? No, Redbreast isn't available on this app. We could do Weller 12-year-old for $50, which is actually not bad at all.
Actual evidence of time of death, and there is no direct and frankly circumstantial evidence presented that the defendant shot and killed his wife Maggie or son Paul. As the evidence established, the murderer would have had blood and biological material on him or her. The murderer would have had blood on his or her clothing. The murderer would have murder weapons. The murderer or murderers would have evidence of disposing of murder weapons on property or vehicle, and there's no evidence that Alex Murdaugh had any of this. He had no blood from the brutal murder of his son Paul. He had no DNA from Paul on his clothing in an area where you would expect to find it if he had shot his son, which he did not. There's no GSR on his clothing or clothes that is inconsistent with Alec holding a shotgun for protection. The state has proven at most that he was at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. The state does not have proof of time of death. The state does only have proof of when the last time Paul and Maggie used their
$74.
phones. Most importantly, and as I mentioned earlier, the law is clear, mere presence at the scene of a crime is insufficient to establish guilt. Although, to be equally clear, Alex Murdaugh was not at the scene of the crime at the time his wife and son were murdered, and there's no evidence that he was. And for that reason, we move for a directed verdict.
Yes, sir. By the state.
Your Honor, looking at the evidence that's been presented by the state, first of all, without detailing every bit of evidence, there's been ample evidence of motive evidence presented in this particular case. The years of embezzlement and theft and the exposure, very significant exposure that the defendant was facing as June the 7th approached would include the loss of a job, the loss of a career, the loss of his bar license, the loss of years of wealth, the potential to lose everything, in his own words. You've heard evidence about a confrontation June 7th on those matters that very day, as well as the boat hearing that was upcoming. And the effects that would have. Also heard extensive evidence of the defendant's financial condition on that day as it moved forward. Also evidence, Your Honor, of his ongoing narcotics addiction and how those particular things were relevant to what was going on as it related to the victims. There's been evidence, and again, as Your Honor is aware, the evidence must be taken in the light most favorable to the state, that family weapons were used to murder Maggie and Paul. You've heard evidence from the defendant's own mouth about a missing shotgun, and of course we have extensive evidence about the missing blackout, that being the replacement gun. Of course, you've heard evidence that the defendant claimed that was missing at Christmas time, but there was evidence from Will Loving that that gun was present and being used, including at the side of the house as late as turkey season, just a couple months prior to the murders. And that from the firearms expert, that the cases found around Maggie's body were cycled through the same weapon. The murder weapon cycled the same cases as weather cases that were found at the side of the house, consistent with what Will Loving testified, as well as at the shooting range across the street. You've additionally heard that the same exact brand and weight of ammo that was used to kill Maggie was found throughout the property, as well as the same buckshot and birdshot ammo as well. There's been evidence presented by the state as to the defendant's trip to Alameda and his interaction with Shelley Smith after the murders, as well as the bringing the raincoat in. Additionally, that he left and moved his dad's truck in the four-wheeler, and that the raincoat contained high levels of GSR. There's been evidence presented in this particular case inconsistent with the defendant's statements to law enforcement, multiple changes of clothes that particular day, as well as evidence from Blanca that the clothes that he was wearing in the Snapchat video were never seen again, as well as the fact that the earlier clothes that he was wearing were not seen either. You have evidence that the defendant claimed that he was unaware that Maggie was coming to Moselle, or he did not ask for that, but you've heard evidence from multiple sources, including a text message that he specifically asked the victim to be present on that day. Your Honor, he was found in possession of a shotgun that cannot be excluded as a murder weapon that also had Maggie's blood on it. And then, of course, Your Honor, we have extensive phone and other digital evidence, and I don't need to reiterate the last witness, but that's been presented from multiple witnesses and multiple sources of a timeline. The defendant, of course, claimed that he was never at the scene, and the evidence shows, pursuant to the state's theory and reasonable inferences therefrom, that he was at the scene, contrary to what he told everyone who would listen. Just minutes, he's at the scene with the two victims, just minutes before, under the state's theory and a reasonable inference from the evidence, the victims were killed. Additionally, his conduct in the timeline after that, there's a number of reasonable inferences about that that are consistent with the defendant's guilt. And to summarize a month's worth of evidence, that is the summary. But happy to address the timeline more, but I know that Your Honor just heard it in great detail.
There's a motion for directed verdict that's made at the end of the state's case. The court is concerned with whether there is any evidence, either direct or circumstantial, which reasonably tends to prove the guilt of the accused, or from which the guilt of the accused may be fairly and logically deduced. In this case, we have had, is it day 20 now? I guess
Yep.
18 days of direct
No, he's not going to throw it.
and
Of course he's not.
circumstantial evidence. And the law makes no distinction between the weight or value to be given either direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. Nor is a greater degree of certainty required of circumstantial evidence than of direct evidence. Cases can be proven by direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, or a combination of the two. At this stage of the proceedings, there is evidence to support a guilty verdict if it is believed by the jury. I therefore deny the motion for a directed verdict. Ready to roll with the defense?
Rock and roll, Your Honor.
Rock and roll.
Wow.
All right, well, let's take a 30-second stretch and bring the jury out and press on.
Wow. Ready to roll. Rock and roll. Ready to roll. Yeah, ready to rock and roll. Your Honor, we have no witnesses. Fuck this guy. All right, so let's see what we got for whiskey choices. We can do
And let's see, you can bring the jury.
Buffalo Trace, $35.
You may bring the jury. There you go. Be seated, please.
We can do Bullet Bourbon. Well, that's the same cost, basically. We can do Makers for $35. We can do Knob Creek, unaged, 1.75 liters for $70.
Very good. Madam Forelady, how's the jury doing? Doing good. Very good. You have heard the state's case. It is now the defense's turn. And you may call your first witness.
All right.
Knob
Coroner
Creek,
Richard Harvey, please.
aged for $42. That sounds pretty good. I think Knob Creek for $42 sounds pretty good.
You know what you look for? Okay, good.
I think Knob Creek for 42 is the winner. Given these choices.
Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth shall help you God?
I do.
You would, sir, be seated. State your full name for the record and spell the last part.
Okay.
And before we begin testimony, I think, Mr. Waters, you're going to formally rest.
May it please the court, Your Honor. In the matter of the indictments of the defendant Alex Murdaugh for the murders of his wife Maggie and his son Paul, the state of South Carolina rests.
The state is rested, and now it's the defense's turn.
State your full name for the record, please.
My name is Richard Harvey.
And Mr. Harvey, you are an elected official here in Colleton County?
Yes, sir. I am the coroner of Colleton County.
Okay, and briefly describe your duties to the jury so they understand what a coroner does.
We basically investigate any death that occurs outside a hospital, any death that dies within 24 hours of admission to a hospital, any emergency room death is reported to the coroner's office as well. And primarily our responsibility is to do an investigation as to the cause of their death, including medical records, autopsies, and that's basically my responsibility, is to determine what the cause of death and the manner of death is.
So, you don't have a medical degree, though?
No, sir.
Okay.
But I was one of the first medically trained coroners in the state of South Carolina.
Okay. And how long have you been coroner?
This is my 30th year.
30th year. So let me talk a little bit about, in general, well, no, let me just go ahead and cut to the chase here. You have a file with you, and I believe it's a file concerning the deaths of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh.
I do.
And how did you get notified of their deaths?
I was actually notified by one of my deputies who was on call that evening. And any time there's a homicide along that lines, in most cases, I attend those. And he was on call, and basically he told me he also has another job because he's only part-time. And he told me, he says, look, I can't stay. He says, I've got to work tomorrow morning. He says, I hate to dump this on you, but he says, but, this is going to be yours.
So you took, well, first let me back up for just a second. Did you respond, and if so, what time did you get to the scene? And I'm going to lead you and say in Moselle.
I was notified at 23:04, which is 11:04 in the evening.
Okay.
And I arrived on the scene. Let me back up there. I arrived on the scene at 23:04. I was actually notified about 22:30 by my deputy who was on call.
So 22:30 would be 10:30?
Yes, sir.
So you got notified at 10:30. You got on the scene at
11:04.
And were you by yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Did you process this scene? Did you have somebody take? Did you take photographs or something?
Yes, sir, I did.
So the photographs in your file
Yes,
are
sir.
your photographs.
Yes, sir.
And in taking those photographs, did you, for instance, go into the feed room and take some photographs?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And had that crime scene been processed by SLED at that point?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you do anything to, and I'll be frank with you, there's some footprints that have been identified as law enforcement or perhaps your folks that were in the feed room, perhaps in blood, before SLED had finished processing. Are those your folks or SLED or who, do you know?
I'm unaware of those.
Okay. So when you took those photographs, did you take precautions to, how do you not disturb evidence?
We've always kind of followed a pattern that we follow the same path in and the same path out. Therefore, we don't cross over into any possible assailants.
Okay. And again, you're preserving evidence. It's a homicide, so this is your
Correct.
case, right? And you do that pursuant to state law.
Yes, sir.
And we've received your photographs. Thank you for those. And I think you gave them to SLED also, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so you perform a function also. I've looked at the death certificates of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh, and you have a time of death of 9 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go through when you begin to examine the body to determine a time of death. Tell me how you do that.
Well, initially that evening, when I initially got there, I was told that SLED was coming, which I knew, depending on where SLED was coming from, it depends. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours. It all depends on what part of the state and what group is actually coming to you. My initial processing was that I went and checked both bodies, and I simply put my hands in their armpits to determine how warm they are. This is one of the things we do sometimes to try and estimate a time of death. Is the body cold? Is the body warm? And one of the other things we check for is what they call rigor. And rigor is basically
Rigor? You call it Riger? Okay.
when a person dies.
Ragger.
The body goes through this process, and as it goes through this process, your joints start to stiffen up. And when I initially got there, that was all I did initially because I knew SLED was coming.
So
Sled is coming. Sled is coming.
I'm not sure how you pronounce
Sled is coming.
I call it rigor.
I call it rigor, but so I'll, if you'll allow me to say rigor. Because
That's fine.
I've never said rigor. Was there rigor or rigor?
There was not.
Okay, so these folks had been dead less than a couple hours?
1 to 3 hours typically is what they say that rigor should start developing.
Okay, and in terms of trying to estimate or get it a little bit closer than 1 to 3 hours, you took your hand. Show me what you did, and you did it both for Paul and Maggie?
Yes.
How about, let me see how we can get this. See it. Could you step down here, please?
Sure.
And they were laying on the ground, both of them, right?
Yes, sir.
And did you move them?
No.
Okay, so...
They were covered with a sheet initially when I got there.
Right, so let's have you stand over
Okay.
here so the jury can see me. And you went up to Paul, and where did you put your hand?
I have to think now which way Paul was laying.
I'm not worried about
Right,
if it was left
okay.
or right.
Basically what I did is I lifted his arm up just a little bit here, and I stick my hand up into the armpit. And that's one of the central areas of your body without using the only other choice is a rectal thermometer. And in most cases when you have that many people around, I'm not going to pull somebody's pants down to utilize the rectal thermometer. So I stick my hands in their armpit, and like I say, I can get an idea, how warm they are.
Okay, and you did the same thing to Maggie?
I did the same thing to
Go ahead,
Maggie.
And you concluded on your death certificate 9 o'clock.
It's strictly an estimation.
That's a guess.
It's a guess.
Okay, could have been 8:30,
Could have been 8:30.
could have been 10 o'clock.
There were no witnesses there to tell me exactly what time this happened.
Do you carry a rectal thermometer to do specific measurements?
Well, usually what I'll do is I'll get it from fire rescue, the ambulance,
Uh-huh.
and I'll borrow theirs. And yes, I do rectal temps.
But you didn't do it on that.
But we didn't do it that night, no.
And that's the reason the death certificate says 9 o'clock.
Right. That was an estimation from what I found as far as the warmth of the body.
Okay. Thank you for your indulgence.
Not sure what the point is really, because like the time frames will never be able to get to a level of precision that's tighter than time frames we're already talking about. Even if he had used every technique in the world, I doubt he would be able to get anything.
We understand each
Cut
other.
them quite sure he couldn't.
Statement of 9 o'clock, it could have been 8 o'clock.
It could have been 8 o'clock.
Their death could have been the result of being shot at 8 o'clock.
I basically looked at 2.5 hours from the time that the call came in to the time I actually got there.
So they could have been shot at 10 o'clock
Could have been.
or any time in between.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Coroner. Please answer any questions.
State has.
By the state.
Mr. Yeah, it's just
Harvey,
not going to be precise enough.
You did not use rectal or any sort of thermometer on that night?
No, sir.
And isn't it true that the best way to determine the actual time of death, particularly in a violent homicide, is to take the temperature?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And the temperature decreases roughly at a rate of 1.5 degrees every hour,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
And it's also affected by the ambient temperature in the area.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yet, as I understand your testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, you really do not have a general
This guy's
idea
voice is a
as to
walking
when that
ambient pill.
incident actually occurred.
That's right. Yes, sir. That's true.
Because You didn't take the temperature, correct?
Oh, you
Right.
didn't take-
And thermometers are not always accurate either, so, and that's one thing that we've learned over the years. I mean, we do have, and actually, we now have the,
Nice. Didn't take the
can't
temperature
say
with the
ultraviolet
rectal
light,
thermometer.
the light that shoots for the forehead. But what I've determined with that is that it's not necessarily accurate, is that I may shoot it at the forehead and it'll say 99 degrees, but if I shoot it in your ear, it might say 103.
That's right.
So, I mean, they're not necessarily accurate either.
That's correct. And it's also impacted by body weight, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Age, elderly
Yes, sir.
versus youth, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the weather,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
If they were covered by a
Yes, sir.
sheet, that
Which they
would,
were at that time when I initially got it.
that could maintain something?
Yes, sir.
If they got wet through rain, that could affect it?
That could, yeah, that could
And
definitely.
you had
help.
rain at that time, didn't you?
It had not rained hard at that point. Both
Not hard.
Both of their hairs were, heads of hair were dry.
Okay. And all those are factors which reflect what the actual time of death is.
Yes, sir.
Yet temperature is key.
Yes, sir.
And the only information you have is that the bodies were warm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Based upon
And
your,
Riger had not started.
and that usually begins to occur within 1 to 3 hours.
1 to 3
correct?
hours. So that's the time frame that I was looking at.
Okay. And you walked around the area, got close to them at that particular time.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct? And you were walking in the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Great.
Sir,
2 questions.
Sure.
Do you remember when Sled showed up?
I do have probably the times for that. I did not see Sled on here, though.
Let me perhaps ask another question.
Okay.
Was Carleton County already there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were there Carleton County detectives there?
Yes, sir. They're,
Okay. Did any of them talk to you about time of death?
no,
Did any of them ask you what your examination revealed?
no,
Did any of them ask you how you came to your decision of the time of death?
no, sir.
Thanks, Dick Harpootlian. That's great. Defense isn't off to a promising start.
further.
Nothing further.
Thank you,
Great.
sir. You may step down.
Yeah, that was not particularly insightful.
Yes, sir.
Shailene Tyndall to the stand, please.
Shailene Kendall. My name is Shailene Kendall. Shailene Kendall.
Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God? If you would, please be seated. State your full name for the record. Spell your last name. Try to speak in that mic so they can hear you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Shalane Tyndall, SHALANETINDAL.
Talked on the phone a couple times,
Yes, sir.
but we've never met, have we?
No, sir.
Okay. And I appreciate you being willing to come here on such short notice today. I know you've got other things to do. So, where do you work?
I work for the Islandton Sheriff's Office as Public Information part-time, and then for my full-time position, I work for the nonprofit blood organization, The Blood Connection, as the divisional logistics coordinator and calendar specialist.
Okay. Oh, my glasses, I'm sorry. So back on June 7th and 8th of 2021, what was your job? What was your job back then with the
I was solely the public information officer at the Sheriff's Office at that time.
Colleton County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to show you a document and see if you can identify this. I think the easiest way to do that is, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Apologize, Your Honor, I've just gotten my two documents jumbled. Here we go. Have you seen this document before?
I'm aware of the Post and Courier publishing things of this nature, yes, but not strictly this document in
Okay, if
question.
you go to the second page. Now, does this, if you look halfway down the page, does that, there is a quote in here from you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it accurate?
This quote was actually coordinated between SLED and us at the time. We received multiple inquiries from the media, and per the sheriff's standard protocol, anytime SLED is in charge of a case or investigation, it's standard procedure to reach out to them and coordinate something with them.
Okay, so the quote from you, this is on the morning, this is the Post and Courier on the morning of June 8th, and the quote contained by you in here, we'll get how that was put together, but is it accurate?
The quote wasn't by me, it was a joint information from SLED and the sheriff's office.
Sheriff spokeswoman Shalane Lowe's referred questions. So, but you were part of the release of this statement?
Yes, it was a joint. Mhm.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to offer this into evidence.
No, I haven't. Could I look at it, please?
Shailene, what did you do? What did you say? What did you say it to?
I have no objection. We have no objection to the quote, but the article, I hadn't read the article. We just object to the rest of the article, and I think he's agreed with that.
I just want these two paragraphs.
Shailene looks like she's
No objection.
deer in the headlights right now. That's to be said.
No objection to what?
To her quote that she gave, and not the rest of the article. We're in agreement on that, if Your Honor is.
Is that what you're offering?
Yes, sir. I'm going to have her publish two paragraphs from this story. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And for the record, Your Honor, this is a story in the Post and Courier on the morning of June 8th, which would be the morning after the murders. So what I'd ask you to do...
I think this is the statement where SLED said there was no danger to the community.
It's in quotes. Would you read
Or no danger to the public,
and
I
this
think is what
paragraph,
the statement
publish it
is.
to the jury. This paragraph at this time, and then a paragraph right after that. Okay? Take it. And would you slow down just a little bit for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, there is no danger to the public. The sheriff's office said, if information is received that dictates otherwise, we will immediately notify the public. Sheriff
My memory isn't
spokeswoman
too bad.
Shalane Lowe's referred questions regarding the incident to SLED and the Colleton County Coroner's office. A request for 911 audio recordings was denied due to the ongoing investigation.
What? I'm sorry, she went further than I asked. That's okay. All right. Now, so that statement was the public has nothing to worry about, right?
That's what it states, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let me ask you the process for this something like this getting released. You said SLED was involved?
Can you clarify exactly what you're asking?
Okay, so this statement, at this time, there's no danger to the public, the sheriff's office said, you would be the spokesperson for the sheriff's office.
Correct, but this was a joint statement released in coordination with SLED's PIO and us while we were waiting on an updated information to do an actual letterhead release.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is, on that, who did you release? Were you the one making this release, or was SLED making? I mean, when I say, I'm talking about physically. How did the Post and Courier get this quote?
SLED and I, PIO at the time, coordinated multiple times through numerous phone calls. There was also emails. This was discussed over the phone due to them being the acting agency on the case, but it did come from my email, but it was coordinated with SLED's PIO at the time.
Okay, so SLED signed off on this statement.
From what I understand from speaking with their PIO at the time.
I mean, you consulted with their, now PIO stands for?
Public Information Officer.
Okay, so the Sheriff's Department has a Public Information Officer, you.
Yes, sir.
SLED has a Public Information Officer named?
At the time, I believe it was Tommy Crosby.
Tommy Crosby. Y'all talked and emailed?
On numerous occasions from the time of the incident on further.
And decided this was the statement that should be made?
When I coordinated with SLED's PIO, this is what was mentioned and this is what we had published.
Okay, and what you're saying is there's no danger.
Put that in
to the
any more
public.
passive voice to
If
avoid
information is
responsibility.
received that dictates otherwise, we'll
I think there's any
immediately
way you could
notify
make that
the
even
public.
more passive than the way you did.
Did you ever, was there a subsequent release given?
After this statement that we put out,
Right.
yes, there was a joint letterhead release. The initial, what the Post and Courier published was an actual statement. Later on, we actually published a release while we were waiting on additional information.
And that subsequent statement didn't indicate there was any danger to the public. It didn't change this position, did it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Did SLED and the Sheriff's Department change its position and put out a statement saying, whoa, now, there's something to worry about? Or did they just not mention this again?
When we did the updated release, that same information was also in the body that was sent over to SLED for their approval. Tommy Crosby had taken a moment to look at the release and later, I guess, decided that we took that out of the release and that it was what was published, excuse me.
So, but they never came back and said, there's something to worry about. They just took this language out.
Yes.
Okay. And SLED signed off on that.
We worked on this together, yes.
Okay, but it wouldn't have gone out if SLED hadn't said,
Yes, sir.
let it out, correct? I mean, you get information and then you shape it into a release here or subsequently that is digestible. Maybe that's the best way to put it. You're the wordsmith. You're the one that tries to make it make sense.
Yes, sir. Public information, we're not privy to investigations. We just receive details, and then we take those and turn them into paragraphs so the paper and anywhere in the media can print for layman's terms to be better understood by the public.
And I want to make sure I understand this. Any subsequent release never changed. Actually, I think you said the subsequent release said the same thing. At this time, there's no danger to the public. That didn't change, correct?
Thank you, Professor.
In the
Logic. That's
updated
very
release
kind
that
of you.
was sent out on letterhead, yes, that was removed.
That was removed.
Yes, sir.
But did they say there is a danger to the public? They never said that, did they?
No, sir.
Take the court's indulgence for just a moment.
Is it true that you're a lying liar that lies? What's the lying liar who's a lie? Lie to the public.
One other question. In this story, your last name is Lowe.
Yes, sir. I got married since then. I guess somebody decided to like me. Well, thank you.
Please answer any questions.
Does he realize now that he made a mistake?
I missed the last question. Did you get married?
Yeah, you sure trying to court me? No, I'm just kidding.
happily married. I am not.
I'm just picking.
I just couldn't hear. What was the date of the second
What the
release?
fuck
Mr.
just
Hopper? I
happened?
honestly don't know. Married. I am not.
Yeah, you still trying to court me? No, I'm just kidding.
I missed the last question. Did you get married?
Yeah, you still trying to court me? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm happily married. I am not.
I'm just kidding.
The date of the second.
The initial letterhead
Hey,
release was
fine.
released on the same date a few hours after the initial statement.
So the one he was asking about second was the same exact statement, word for word.
Yeah,
that
I know what
was
she
released
said.
earlier.
I
The
understood the
second,
words. It was
the
just
initial, what we initially
couldn't
put
believe
out
they were
at
said.
around, I think, before 10 o'clock in the morning, we had received inquiries from Fitz News, News 4, and I believe the Post and Courier. So the initial statement that I coordinated with SLED was the what he was referring to. Afterwards, an updated letterhead release, as additional information became available to us, was coordinated with SLED that redacted that information.
And I'm just going to show you, for this, is this the document you're talking about here? And it's dated June 21st. Is that what you're talking about or not?
No, that is not.
Congratulations on your marriage. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Anything further?
Only this question. Did you think that Mr.
you tell us
Meadows
more about the
was
wedding?
proposing to you a moment ago?
oh my god!
know.
Let it go! Let it go! It's not funny
No
anymore.
further questions. Thank you.
You may step down.
Holy shit, dude! It wasn't that funny the first time. Hold on,
Any additional witnesses today?
Your Honor, as we've discussed, the next witness would be extraordinarily lengthy. It's 4:30. I apologize to the jury and the court for not having somebody intermediate. We just couldn't find anybody, not knowing when the state was going to rest.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will adjourn for the weekend. As you know, Monday is a holiday. We will not be here on Monday. We'll be back 9:30 Tuesday morning. I know it's a long holiday, but still do not discuss the case with anyone. And hope have a safe and happy holiday and good weekend, and we'll see you all on Tuesday morning at 9:30.
all right, I'm going over to talk with Nick about this wrap up because I want to talk about it with somebody else. But that will conclude our coverage for the day. I think I will be back on Tuesday. My current sort of working plan is to be back on Tuesday and cover this. But that's obviously subject to change. But yeah. So yeah. I'm going to bounce you over there as well so that you guys will automatically
Today.
redirect over there.
Okay, we'll see everyone next week.
All right. I'll see you guys over there in a second, man. We'll have a little post-trial wrap-up commentary. Love you guys lots. Bye for now. And I will expect to be back on Tuesday. I'm going to expect to try to do a full day on Tuesday. So we'll see how that goes. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.